I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Pam Kuhn is joining us for a workshop exploring different forms of worship, hybrid, in-person. What's it going to be like for us as Quakers? And I'm going to let Pam sort of take it from here and tell us what's in store for us.
Great. I wonder if we could just start with a moment of centering. Okay, well, thank you very much, and thank you for coming today. A little bit about how I got here. I'm a member of Lake Forest Meeting, which is in north of Chicago. And about a year ago, a little over a year ago, in a very contentious meeting, we decided that we wanted to become hybrid. And I think it was the sense of the meeting, but it's certainly not everybody agreed with that. So we had needed an ad hoc committee to make that hybrid happen. And so they looked at me to clerk that committee, being no stranger to controversy. So in that, as that position, I attended some of the workshops, which a year ago were online. Pendle Hill and Woodbrook did one, a weekend one, and Beacon Hill did one. And I learned a few things about that, about hybrid or about using technology. And I thought it would be good to take that to my yearly meeting, which is Illinois Yearly Meeting. And Sally Weaver Summers happened to be the FGC rep that year, last year. And she said, oh, why don't you do this at Lake Erie Yearly Meeting, which I was very happy to do since I spent a few years at Worcester Meeting about 10 years ago. So I'm really glad to see my friends there, and Nancy Fink from Illinois Yearly Meeting too. So it's nice to see you all. So one of the things that I learned is, especially a year ago, everybody wanted to talk about technology. What microphones do we need? Where do we put the camera? And what I realized is from all of these workshops is what you first need to say is, what is your meeting all about? Who are you as a meeting? And how can the technology serve you and not the other way around? So what I found was what was most helpful is to share information with each other. So I thought I would do some breakout rooms, and then you'll have a chance to talk to each other. And I'm hopeful, Joanne is helping me, thank you, that we can get different meetings in each breakout room. And I have a query for 3 or 4, how many we have time for. You don't need to report. When we come back together, if anybody has something they'd like to share, that's fine, but I won't be calling on groups to report. The first breakout room is just an introduction. So if you could make sure your meeting is on your name, that would be helpful. So in the introduction, it's very short. This could take 45 minutes. Instead, I'm going to give you just 6 or 7 minutes. And I would like you to say your name, which monthly meeting you're from, what you're doing. Are you doing Zoom? Are you doing hybrid or blended, as some people call it, in your meeting for worship and in your meeting for business? And yesterday we were talking about the importance of meeting for business, and I am in there with those people who find meeting for business as very important for community building. So then I would just one sentence, how is it going? Not a whole big explanation, just one sentence. So, I'm Pam Kuhn, Lake Forest Meeting, it's north of Chicago. We have been doing hybrid meeting for worship for about a year. And we're doing Zoom for meeting for business, but we're going to try to move to hybrid in September. It did not go well until recently. We got a new microphone and we mounted a camera, and now things seem to be going better. That's it for now. We can talk more later. So, is everybody there with me?
Pam, how long would you like these breakouts to last?
This first one, just for 6 minutes. It should be about 4 people in a group. Is that about what we are?
It worked out fine to do 3, actually, and you can either join a group or just decline to join it, Pam.
I think I will not this first time.
All right, here we go. I'm about to beam you up, Scotty.
So one of the things that I hope that we can do today, I hope this will be useful for you, is to think about who you are as a meeting. So I found this quotation in a missioner lecture by William and Frances Tabor, and it's from Carolyn Stevens, who lived in the 19th century. And I think this is what we are trying to reach in our meetings for worship and meetings for business. So she writes, "My whole soul was filled with unutterable peace of the undisturbed opportunity for communion with God, with the sense that at last I had found a place where I might, without the faintest suspicion of insincerity, join with others in simply seeking God's presence." So that's to put you in the mood. And I would like you in this breakout room, and this will be a little bit longer, more like 15 minutes, to talk about how you center at the beginning of meeting for worship or meeting for business, or I hope a committee meeting. There's a process that friends seem to go through, and when you center. So how you center, how that may have changed in the past 2 years, and then finally, how does the community helps you to center, either on Zoom or in person, how the community is helping you in that centering time. Is that clear? So you're just going to share with each other out of the silence how you center, how that's changed in the past 2 years, and how the community helps you in that process. And it's in the chat if you can't remember. Okay.
Did you open them, Bill? Good. Because they're going.
I didn't do it.
That's weird, because I didn't either.
Oh.
People must be selecting them for themselves.
Or did you turn off the record button?
No.
Again, here we go.
All right. Does anybody, would they like to share what happened in their group? Anything that particularly spoke to you?
One of the things that came up in our group was the problem of the children. You know, they aren't going to be on Zoom. They're not going to sit for an hour. They miss the interactions with other kids. And I mean, it may take a generation to get them back. So I think that's a serious issue.
From our group, I would say that several people in different groups who are not really mobile are enjoying Zoom because they can attend, and that there are split groups, part of your group who wants to meet in person who will not meet on Zoom, but that people have done different problem solving, and maybe they meet in small groups for a while in one home, but they're on Zoom. You know, like when our Canadian friends couldn't cross the border anyway, they would sometimes meet together and we would see them on Zoom. That's what I remember so far.
I think at Birmingham, we've got a little bit of inertia where we're gotten used to Zoom, the short commute to meeting. And it's some of our folks are actually unlikely to attend in person because they have conditions or reasons that they wouldn't be able to join us. So there's a lot of kind of drag on reconvening in person that it's probably just some stuff around habits. Because I know I can get up earlier and enjoy the ride to meeting if that's what we start doing.
About the quality of centering, someone told me that it helps if you turn your own camera off. And I've been startled at that making a difference. Somehow it's like I'm looking at others and I can stop being self-conscious about seeing myself, and it helps me center more, I believe.
Joanne, do you let others continue to see you, but you just turn off your tile so that you're not looking at yourself?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, we have an issue with that. Not issue, a question. Some people like to have their cameras turned off so that people don't see their faces, which is fine, which is totally fine. And yet it creates this sort of it's also, equitable, because some people in the meeting room don't sit on camera, some sit off camera, but it creates this thing of, well, we don't get to see the people who are with us like we would if someone was actually sitting, and we were all sitting in the room, we'd all see each other's faces. So it's just a question of different styles.
So there I've demonstrated. I can no longer see myself, but I'm pretty sure you can still see me,
Yeah.
right?
Well, how did you do that?
I went to the little blue. No, you can't see me?
It helps. The way you do that is with the three little dots. If you're on a computer and there's something that says hide self-view, then you don't feel like you're looking in the mirror the whole time.
Oh,
I saw somebody doing this one
I
time.
see it. Okay.
And then once
So,
you've done that, to get it back, you have to go up to the view corner, and one of your choices is show self view again.
Why am I not showing?
Rosemary, you're
so
showing. We can
So
see
we
you.
can still see Joanne, but she can't see herself. The question about people showing their picture or their name rather than their faces, I have become much more accepting of that. Part of that is as I've done some anti-racism work, a person of color told me that he didn't want people staring at his face. And I don't think that's true of all people, but that way. But that was one of it. And another person said that I don't want to be visible unless I'm all dressed up. And I don't think that's limited to people of color, but it's something that people have a feeling, if there's a camera on me, I better be looking good. I think there are other reasons that people might be want to be their cameras off. People I call the wigglers, and for whom sitting quietly is difficult, physiologically difficult. And if they turn off their camera, maybe they can sit in meeting and crochet or knit or whatever. And it's not distracting on the camera to see people moving because their camera's off. And yet it's much easier for them to sit in a meeting for worship. So there are various, and there are other reasons as well. I turned my camera off during meeting for business because I didn't want the clerk to be distracted by a visitor in meeting for business here in Lake Erie, especially when you were talking about next year's sessions. The theme of our yearly meeting is many roots, one tree. So sometimes on Zoom, that feels like many little boxes one Zoom link. So one of the reasons that I think our meeting was able to move to Zoom really quickly in March 2020 is because we already had a strong community. And so we went on Zoom and I didn't see a little box. I thought, oh, there's my friend. Oh, I'm so glad to see them. And on from there. However, as the years have gone by, it seems like there's sometimes a little bit of a barrier. And there's no little reaction button for Meeting for Business that says, this friend speaks my mind, or something like that. And the little comments, a little, when, you know, walking somebody to the door after meeting, you're missing that. But even in person, the masks, I mean, we used to say, come to Meeting for Worship. It's a safe place to take off your invisible mask and be your authentic self. And now we're saying, put on a mask, be safe, leave distance between you. So all of that is creating barriers. But I think every so often, those barriers fall down. And the first time the yearly meeting was on Zoom in 2020, I remember the clerk said, she was looking at my backdrop, and she said, you know, when I came on, I thought we were all on Hollywood squares, but now I realize that we're all connected in a patchwork quilt. So, so I thought it would be helpful if we could talk about those times when the barriers have disappeared, and whatever technology you're using or not using in the past few years. And try and share those experiences with each other. I'll read you a little Bible verse from John 15:5. It says, I am the vine and you are the branches. Whoever remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit, for you can do nothing without me. So back you go to your little rooms and just talk about those times that you felt a gathered meeting, or if you felt deeply connected to another friend. Maybe it's not a Meeting for Worship, maybe it was some other activity that you were doing, and you can share those with each other. Hopefully they'll be inspiring.
How long are we doing this time for, Pam?
I think 15 minutes. Again, is that a good time for people? 15 minutes feel right? Not getting in.
Two members of our group are having to leave at this point for other obligations. Okay. So I'm wondering if that's happening with other groups and if we want to reconstitute or if we just want to stay with whoever's there in the original group. That's your choice.
Well, I have one more query, but do we want to just stay as a whole group?
You could do that.
Or would you rather go back into?
I think it might be nice to do it all together.
Okay, why don't we just stay as a whole group there? So let me ask first if anybody wants to share some of the things that you talked about in your groups.
And I would say that I'm beginning to I'm beginning to realize the value of entering the space, whether it's on Zoom or into a room, entering in silence as opposed to having conversation in that space before meeting starts. It seems that that's helpful for individual centering down and for the whole meeting to be more gathered if the chit chat happens somewhere else other than in that meeting space before meeting.
One of the things we touched upon was the impact of the hybrid or Zoom meetings on the children. The fact that there, at least in our meeting, there's been very little programming for children since this started.
So it is a problem because if you're Zoom only, and the first people back in person at our meeting were the families. And sometimes we do a little bit of hybrid because we picked up a child from another state. But we found we had a different link, and we did a very short hybrid, but we mailed out activities to the children, and so they could, and we read stories, and we still had some singing Sundays, and I would read stories to the children. And then I remember we were on a committee meeting on Zoom, and somebody's child wandered in and said, "Oh, there's Pam. Is she going to read us a story?" And so that was kind of felt good that they did relate to the fact that that can happen on Zoom. But yes, parents don't want children on screen for a long time anyhow. Okay, other things that you might share that you would like to share with the whole group? So I have one more little exercise for you. And if you have a scrap of paper, you can write these down or just think about them. I'd like you to think of 3 positive attributes about your monthly meeting or worship group. So, I've been a Quaker my whole life, but you want to tell me how great your meeting is in 3 ways that is particularly important to your meeting. And but you don't have to explain what a Quaker is. I already know that, but I don't know your meeting necessarily. I kind of know Worcester, but other ones. So just take a minute to think about that. 3 attributes, strengths of your meeting. So I did this at Lake Forest a few years ago, and we all came up with some of the things are the same, but there were a lot of different answers. So now the question is, those strengths, that's what you want to feed. So as we said last night, if you have love inside, that's what you want to feed. So how could technology, what are the strengths, and do you think there's a way that technology could help with that?
Pam, I'm not sure what you're asking us to do. Is this something we're doing here as a group, or that we're supposed
Yeah, I think we'll just stay in one big group now.
Oh, okay.
Instead of going in the little groups.
So you don't simply want us to tell you what 3 things we think our meeting is doing, is that right?
You can tell us that if you want, but then I just want to think about how could technology help you is to really focus in on those strengths and make them.
Gotcha.
Do you want us just to speak when we're ready, or are you gonna how?
Yeah. I think you can just speak when you're ready. Are we hearing Joyce?
I am muted, yeah. But I guess it causes a disturbance when I talk. So
we're getting a lot of feedback from you, Joyce. I'm sorry. Does somebody else want to share?
Well, I can mention 3 positive attributes of the Pittsburgh meeting. One is that we are welcome of various levels of theism. I mean, we have everybody from Bible quoting Christians to non-theists, but it's okay. We accept all of them. There are also many of us who are active in the wider community on causes which we could all support. It reminds me of a question we once had a fall gathering centered on, and that was, if you were accused of being a Quaker, would there be enough evidence to convict you? No. Would your friends or colleagues be surprised to hear that you're a Quaker, or would they say, oh, well, that explains it? So that's an important aspect. And then the third, I think, would be that we support each other in moments of personal difficulty.
So are you a hybrid meeting, a blended meeting, or Zoom only, or in person?
Oh, hybrid.
And other ways that you feel that you've been able to use those strengths to in your hybrid meeting or your blended meeting?
Yeah, it's been very hard. We've had some serious controversies in our meeting over the last couple of years, and they have not been resolved. Just not together enough to make it work.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Other people want to share?
the only thing that I would add was that we've been able to welcome people from far to our meeting. For instance, we have one family in Philadelphia, and then we have another family from Southern Ohio that comes every Sunday.
That's one of the big advantages. Long lost members have suddenly turned up. Other things to share?
Yeah, I'd say for Broadmead, I think it's using the technology, because we're so spread out, and before the pandemic, between the two worship groups, we didn't see each other very much, but we all like each other. So that's one of our strengths. I think we care about each other. We're a strong community. We listen, I think, well to each other. And we have, particularly in Bluffton, very consistent attendance. And I think the technology has helped us. I mean, we're together as a group much more now than we were. And committee meetings, cutting back on the traveling, I think has just made it easier for people to participate more fully, which we're a very participatory meeting anyway. So that's a strength. And I think Zoom has made us build on that and taken away some barriers. But we're very eager to get together for our fall retreat in person.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree, not having to drive and having the ability to take an hour of time and, just make it productive. With our ministry and nurture, there's a member who has a very active counseling practice. And we've wanted him on ministry and nurture for some time. But just in the past few months, he has agreed to block off an hour, maybe once a month in his counseling calendar. and we can, zip in and do some work, and it's not a block of 3-4 hours the way it would have been.
What meeting are you in, Harriet?
Birmingham meeting.
Thank you.
Quite apart from meeting for worship, I'm told, although I participate in person, I'm told that randomly assigned breakout rooms work better for socializing after meeting than standing out in the lobby. And I see many nods, yes.
We need to try it again. We tried that once. It didn't really work, but I think maybe we need to try again.
This is Jeff from Ann Arbor, and I would support what Tom just said about Ann Arbor, that those worked surprisingly well. One of the 3 positive attributes I wrote about our meeting was our technology, and so then I was faced with how can technology improve our technology, and it could be better. We do argue about it, but it's pretty good. What's I going to say besides that? I don't know that there'll be another opportunity to share this, so I'll share it now. Many of us think it has been wonderful to have distant members, people who have moved away or what have you, be able to participate. Someone else said that, and that's been great, and most of us would not want to lose that. At the same time, there's a small but adamant minority who want nothing to do with technology in the meeting room, and basically refuse to join us in the meeting room as long as we're a blended meeting. And some of us don't foresee an answer to that. We go round and round, but don't seem to get any closer to a solution.
So I am very empathetic with the sense of, I remember reading about a Zoom group in, like 2018 or something. And I thought, that's crazy. How could they have a Zoom meeting for worship? And now, of course, here I am. And I respect that. What I struggle with is when somebody says, I come to meeting for worship for my sense of spiritual nurture, and the meeting should accommodate what I want. And it's all about the individual, and they're not looking beyond that. And I don't know how you can deal with that, but that's what you need to try and get beyond. And maybe it's for these, I know another meeting, I was telling Joanne that they started a Zoom meeting in 2020, but then a group started meeting outside at the meeting house. And now they can't get back together. They do meeting for worship, meeting for business together, but they can't do the worship together. They haven't been able to figure that out. And they have the technology. It's just, I don't want it on while I'm at worship sort of feeling. So it's a major issue. And I know another meeting that alternates. 1 week the Zoom people are in the meeting house. The next week they're in, the other group is in the meeting house. And the Zoom group meets in the first day school room. So it is going to take some time. It takes some time to get used to things because, it was overnight. We changed. We didn't have the nice long process that we usually have. So I know it's a hard thing to do. And I think if you focus on community rather than individual needs, it might help. Are there other things? So one thing that we did at our meeting, we have somebody who who's very spiritually grounded, but not very Quaker literate. And we had these little 3-person meetings together, and they were very meaningful because we could sort of open up, because there were only 3 of us, we had plenty of time, and they were on Zoom, but it kind of helped. You were saying you had some big controversies at Pittsburgh, and just having some little groups every so often seems to help that. It also definitely helps if you call people one-on-one so that people feel that they're heard. It doesn't mean that you're changing any of the decisions or anything, but it helps to know that they're heard. A couple other things that we did right at 2020, March 2020, what are we doing here? And we started a few groups outside of meeting so that people wouldn't feel so isolated. And so one of the groups, we used to have we had a pre-meeting discussion group instead of after meeting. So that seemed like an long time on Zoom. So we moved it to Saturday night. Well, when we moved it to Saturday night, it meant 2 friends or 2 or 3 friends from another meeting could also join us. So now we have 2 meetings together, meeting on Saturday night. Then, of course, things started to open up, and friends went out partying Saturday night. So it's a little smaller group now, but we're still meeting on Saturday night, and it's 2 monthly meetings. The other thing we started was a group that just did handwork together, knitting and crochet and quilting, and those are people from all over the place, because my sister comes from upstate New York and somebody else is from Southern Illinois. So that has been a really opportunity to meet with other meetings and in a just sort of a fun way to do that. I also think that in Illinois Yearly Meeting, I don't know if this is still happening, but all the clerks of monthly meetings or worship groups would get together for at a Zoom meeting like once a quarter or something, and just talk about issues going on in their meeting and help support each other as clerks of the meeting, clerks. So I don't know if you're doing that at Lake Erie, but it's not too hard to organize. And I don't know who, we have a field secretary who did the organizing, but that's another thing you can do. So we had a long talk about racial equity this morning and anti-racism, and you might want to think about ways in which using Zoom links, particularly between meetings, might help in that work as you're doing that. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm wondering if there's anything else that friends would like to share or you'd like to talk about.
Pam, do you see Tom's hand up?
Tom, I don't see Tom.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay.
Oh, Tom. Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Hi. In some of the breakout discussions we've had, I mean, we've been talking about some of the benefits of technology. I think it's helped with accessibility. It's helped with bringing people together, and there's a lot of. And I'm one of the AV coordinators on Sunday mornings, so I'm invested in this. But this a couple of comments earlier, we're talking about people who are not participating in meeting now, and one of the things that occurs to me, and I was joking with our breakout that one of our testimonies as friends is simplicity, and this is definitely not simple. But I'm also feel like there's something to grieve here, because I'm not sure that we're ever going to go back to not being hybrid, our meeting. I don't know how we could in some ways, because it's helped us in a number of ways. And I feel like, well, has the experience of our meeting changed fundamentally? Until 2 years ago, our meeting would look familiar to someone from 350 years, the early history of Friends. People get together in a room and they sit and things happen. But now we're doing that with a camera and a laptop and video screens and speakers and microphones. And I don't know, I guess I'm resonating with someone who says this is too much. I cannot go there because this is not Quakerdom to me. And that makes sense.
So has anybody, I know that's a feeling it's happening in a lot of meetings, and also happens with people who are on Zoom all day for their work, or a lot of their work, and then they're in the same chair, in the same room, in the same computer for meeting for worship, and it's very hard to switch. So I don't know if any meetings have had ways in which they can help that. I know we've had midweek meeting, which is a much smaller group, and maybe you can have a midweek meeting that's not connected. The other thing that we did is and when you walk into Lake Forest meeting, the first thing you see is a fireplace in front of you, and then you see the benches, and then there's big windows that look out into the woods, and then only if you turn all the way around do you see the television screen and the camera and all the electronics. So it's at least not walking into the room that you see the electronics. But then we just got a new microphone on the stand, which is hard to hide. But we have ordered, even though we ordered in January and they haven't come yet, microphones that will be in the ceiling, and they should sort of blend into the rafters, we're hoping. So that it's not quite so obvious. But I also think at the yearly meeting, we have a pretty big room. We have an old meeting house, and we've always done meeting for business talking into a microphone. And it wasn't so hard to switch to doing that on meeting for worship also. So it's kind of what you're used to. And it takes a while, as you said, 300 years of people coming into a room and sitting quietly. It's now suddenly it's different. But there are a lot of other differences too, since I studied the 19th century, where things are not quite what it was. But physically it is different. Although I'm glad we have heat now in our building.
Pam, I hadn't thought of it as an adjustment or accommodation, but when you mentioned midweek meeting, Red Cedar holds a 9 a.m. technology-free, smaller meeting, and then our hybrid worship starts at 10:30. So we can give people a chance to come to either and kind of walk past each other with masks on the way in and out.
You just have to be careful that you don't suddenly become two meetings. Although if you always had that early meeting, maybe that's not such an issue. The thing that I'm finding really a challenge is how do you encourage spiritual growth and pastoral care and nurturing, and what we used to call the elder and minister relationship. You might, if you were in person, you might just sort of make a little comment or something, but now you have to make a phone call, and it gets to be a bigger deal. Instead of just saying thank you for your message, you're calling somebody up and saying, I just want to call you and thank you for your message, goodbye, or something. It's much more difficult to get by that, and I don't know how to get around that.
I think maybe that's a function of our generation. I mean, my daughter, for instance, she texts me messages all the time, just short little thingies. Like you could just say thanks for your message in a text message and boom, it's done.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
and so in a way, technology, maybe you don't get a chance to talk to that person after meeting. I'm thinking again about what you said, how could technology actually help us? And, oh, yeah, I can just send a quick text message and say, thanks. Now it's a little harder if it's a troubling thing. You know,
Right.
Then you don't want to send a quick message, say, you know, you're a jerk. What did you do that for? You know?
And I've been finding it important to sort out individuals, what they will and will not do. This person owns a cell phone, but it's never on and will never read a text. You know, this person has only a landline. This person refuses to read email. It's all over the map. I know LEYM was trying to sort out landline and cell phone numbers on the recent statistics report, which is very helpful.
So one other thing that I learned is that newcomers often are much more willing to try out a meeting if they can come online, because they can just go off. They don't have to walk down the sidewalk to get to your meeting house. So be ready to welcome newcomers who come on just on Zoom. Okay, I think we're at the end of our time. And thank you very much for letting me come and visit with you at Lake Erie. And thanks to technology for letting me zoom in from North Carolina. Wonderful to see you all.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Thank you, Pam, and for being with us through the whole time. It's been great.